It's okay. I found it. We can all stop looking. Here it is. The worst laptop ever made. But does it have any redeeming qualities? No. Wait. It might have one. So stay tuned. And if you enjoy mocking poor innocent victims of 90s computer cash grabs and cost cutting, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. We don't always mess around with the worst computers ever built, but when we do, we go all in. Okay, so I was going to make a totally different video this week. We were going to overclock an old Mac. But then this thing turned up right on my doorstep, fresh from Facebook Marketplace. The Brother Super Power Note Graphic PN 9000 GR. Catchy. And I immediately fell in love with it. Now, you might be thinking that this thing doesn't really look like a real laptop. It kind of looks like one of those old school computer toys from Toys R Us back in the day with this funky screen size and the fact that it's made by Brother, who made a bunch of those word processor type things. But this thing is much more akin to a full-fledged laptop because of one specific and really interesting detail. This thing is based on GeOS. That's right, the same GeOS made famous for running a graphical environment on machines like the Commodore 64. Although by the mid-90s, this thing called Windows was everywhere, and GeOS was parted out to PDAs and early smartphones and budget devices like this good old Brother Power Note. I was really intrigued by the fact that it runs GeOS and also that it has a trackpad on it. I tried to find more information about this thing on the good old Google, but let me pop up my findings right here. Yeah, there was hardly anything. Brother released a ton of really goofy budget computers, a lot like this, right around the mid-90s with all sorts of different low-end specs and processors like the Z80. MJD did a video on one, and so did vWestlife. I'll link both of those below because they're pretty fun. But neither one of those machines is quite like this thing. So I literally have no idea what's in this thing. Whiteboard guy, what do you think? Get out of here with that. Never listen to that guy. Poor little brother. All right, let's crack into this thing and discover its secrets together. After a quick word from today's sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay has always been a one-stop shop for high-quality PCB prototyping and production. But did you know that they offer all sorts of physical prototyping? I'm talking about 3D printing, injection molding, CNC machining, and even sheet metal fabrication. You can go from idea to fully realized prototype all in one place, with pricing and shipping times that are best in class. So if you have any PCB needs, I hope you'll give PCBWay.com a try. Okay, let's take a quick look around this thing because, yeah, it's pretty interesting just how much it straddles the line between real laptop and some kind of goofy toy. And the first thing you notice, of course, is the goofy sized screen with this weird widescreen aspect ratio, which is straight up black and white pixels. Sort of like an original Game Boy with a transflective display behind it to reflect the light. And yeah, this thing is not too easy to read unless you have the lighting on it just right. Underneath that, you have a contrast slider switch and actually a pretty reasonable keyboard with a kind of a nice key feel. I'm surprised. I accidentally just launched an application. Uh-oh. Underneath that keyboard, you have a surprisingly nice feeling trackpad and two mouse buttons, although it kind of seems like both of them do the same thing. And it still has all of the original sales stickers on here, which are kind of funny. Made in the USA! Asterisks in tiny print from USA and foreign components. Yeah, made in the USA. Around the side here is a 3¼ inch disk drive, which handles 1.44 megs and 720K, which is pretty cool. On the back here, we have what is probably a coffee stain, and a little flap here, which has parallel port and a serial port. And finally, around the left-hand side, we have a power switch and 12-volt power jack. And that, my friends, is the Super PowerNote Graphic PN9000GR. On the software side, we have kind of this very generic menu here, which is a lot like most of these kind of fake pretend laptops that just had a bunch of proprietary software stored in a read-only memory. But there's a little more to it here. So we have our standard word processing and spreadsheet applications here, address book, internet category, and some other stuff. But if you click into one of these applications, and wow, this mouse cursor is like impossible to see when it's moving. Yeah, quality display. We get our first clues that, well, something is a little bit special here. Specifically that this software suite is GeoWorks. And yeah, that's pretty cool. And honestly, it's a very full-featured software suite. If we start a new document and, well, it's not particularly fast, but yeah, look at this. I mean, it's not bad. This is much more full-featured than you'd see on a lot of these cheapo pretend laptop word processor things. And I really want to try to use the internet apps, but unfortunately the only thing we can do is set up a PPP connection, which requires a modem, and we don't have a modem and we don't have any ISP to dial into. So yeah, we'll have to figure out maybe some other way to get online with the serial port and a modem emulator. I don't know. Okay, and I would take you through all of these other apps, but honestly, they're pretty boring. I mean, it's interesting how full-featured that all of them are, but yeah, they're just kind of your standard issue, old-timey applications from the 90s. Draw program, word processor, spreadsheet, address book. We've seen all of that stuff before. So what's more interesting is what I found lurking in the very full-featured file manager. Check this out. Here in the root of the F drive is command.com, and it's labeled DOS. And guess what? If we open up this, it's DOS. Look at that. It's DOS 6.22 in ROM in this machine. And when I first got this thing, I was not expecting to find that. Now, it calls itself ROM DOS 622 from Datalight Inc. And, well, it doesn't really have a whole lot of commands that you would like to have in here. For instance, if I try to type something like mem, well, mem's not in there, so we can't actually see what we're doing. And honestly, I don't know what processor is in this machine, but there's a solution for that, hopefully. I made a whole bunch of DOS disks with different software on it, including HWinfo, which will tell us what kind of system this is. I assume it's x86 since we're in DOS, but let's find out. Let's see if this can read the disk, first of all. All right, we're in there. dir/w, and there's our hwinfo.exe. Let's run it. Yeah, look at that. This thing is running DOS applications. And I apologize for the flickeriness. I can't find any setting in my camera that eliminates it. So yeah, apologies for that. Hopefully some of these screens it will be less pronounced. But yeah, let's take a look at mainboard info. Whoa. This thing has a 386SX in it at 33 megahertz. It has an ISA bus. It has 2 megs of RAM, and for some reason, the computer name is AT&T, with BIOS manufacturer unknown, but a date of 7/29/97. Okay, well, I was not expecting this to be an x86 machine when I saw it on Facebook Marketplace, and I certainly was not expecting it to have a 386 in here. So yeah, let's crack this thing open and take a look inside. All right, so let's see what we have here. A very standard floppy drive. With floppy power. This thing is way more of a computer than I expected it to be. All right, so looking around the motherboard here, it's actually really interesting. I had a quick Google of what some of these chips are, and we have two different kinds of RAM chips here. This looks like the ROM. This is our processor, but it's actually a whole system on a chip with a 33 megahertz 386, memory controller, parallel, serial, all of that on this system on a chip. We have a keyboard controller, and yeah, I have no idea what this big socketed chip is, but it's socketed, so it must be pretty important. If anybody has any ideas, it's an MX J9734. But really interesting, there's a whole bunch of unpopulated stuff, especially up in this area here. This looks like it would have been the optional modem, but there's even a spot here marked CRT with a VGA header and solder pads there. So I guess VGA out was an option for these things? Or maybe this board was repurposed from something else. Anyway, let's put this thing back together, bust out a bunch of DOS software, and see how much fun we can have with this thing. All right, let's try some DOS games. And I bet this thing is just a secret, low-key DOS gaming powerhouse. What with its black and white dot matrix display and and CGA compatible graphics. And we could actually launch them from within the GEOS file manager here. As you can see, it says brick.exe, catacomb.exe with these little DOS icons, meaning they're DOS executables. But I want to bring up a new command.com here so that we can do it from the command line in case, you know, it just crashes right out of the gate. We'll be able to see what kind of error message there is. So on here I've got two games, both of them CGA compatible games. The first is a breakout type game, which should have sound and, well, it's a color game, so I don't know how well that's going to translate to this screen. Yeah, color test. Oh yeah, perfect. And there is some slight sound coming out of this. All right, start game. Oh no, it crashed. That's fun. Let's try Catacomb, which is actually a very special game. Catacomb was written by John Romero and John Carmack of Doom fame before they ever wrote Doom, along with art by Adrian Carmack. And just look at this startup screen here. That looks quite cool, even on this garbage display. So yeah, select graphics mode, CGA, of course. Hey, this is working. All right, game starts, pause. Oh, it's in a demo mode, okay. No, it's out of demo mode, but the key presses don't work right. Arrow keys don't do anything. I don't think the keys on this keyboard correspond to the keys that the game is expecting. I think escape makes him start to, like, try to move up. What is going on here? Okay. Let's quit that. That was Catacomb on the Super Power Note graphic PN9000GR. Just as John Romero intended it. Alright, next game disc. So this is actually a modern game called Silly Knights, written for CGA graphics, actually just using text characters as if they were pixels. So looking kind of good so far. Arrow keys don't do anything. Oh, it's starting. A cutscene? And, okay. I'm not moving. He just started swinging the sword. And now there is no keyboard input. Do something. Oh, he started running. Okay. I don't think this keyboard plays very kosher with actual DOS games. Okay, and the last thing I want to try is disc number blue here, which has Kermit, the DOS Terminal Communication Suite on it. I think we can get this thing online. We're going to use this Wi-Fi serial modem emulator from theoldnet.com, which we've used to get a lot of old machines online, and this just emulates a Hayes compatible modem and will work with an old communication suite like Kermit and let us, instead of connecting to phone numbers, connect to web-based services. So I'm going to plug this into the serial port, power this thing up, and we'll see if Kermit gets any data. All right, I've issued the connect command, and let's reset the modem here. Oh, there it is. TheOldNet.com serial Wi-Fi modem emulator. Oh, and it's trying to connect to my mobile hotspot. Let me turn that thing on. Okay, so we're connecting to the 6800 port on Captain's quarters. And I wonder if he's doing some kind of maintenance, because it was asking me some different questions than it does normally. Or maybe I just forgot. But anyway, Captain's quarters 2 loading quite slowly because I'm only connecting at 300 baud, which is, even for the day, was terribly slow. So I think we're going to disconnect from here, set the baud rate to something higher, and see if this computer can handle it. Okay, so I set the modem to 9600 and now set Kermit to 9600. And then I already forget how to, I think it's just connect, okay. And doesn't seem to do anything. Oh no, something has gone terribly wrong. Okay, well, I just could not get this thing to talk to the modem any faster than 300 baud, and I don't know if it has something to do with the goofy keyboard issues that I was also having in games, but yeah, at least we were able to technically get this thing online and connect to a BBS. And you know, I think I'm growing a little attached to this quirky thing. It's sort of like how in old episodes of Top Gear, they'd drive a bunch of terrible cars in places they were never meant to go, and yeah, they would wind up falling in love with them despite all of their issues, or maybe even because of those issues. On the other hand, I've had a little bit of time to really consider the environment that this computer was released into. This thing has real 1986 specs with 2 megs of RAM and a 386 processor. But it was released in 1997. At least that's the date that we found all over the place, like under the keyboard and in the BIOS. Who are they selling these things to? People with limited computer experience who didn't really know what they were buying? The biggest criticism against the GeoBook back in 1996 and 7 was that if you spent $500 or $600 on a GeoBook, you could also spend $500 or $600 on a used Windows 95 machine. Yeah, because Pentium processors had been out for years at that point, and Brother was trying to hawk a 386 with 2 megs of RAM to people who didn't understand what they were buying or why it was such a poor value. It seems a little scummy to me, actually. But today is 2022, and to kind of experience in a weird way, a kind of a what if of computing history is pretty neat. So yeah, but that'll do it for this video. If you had one of these things, make sure to let me know in the comments below what you thought of it and how you used it back in the day. And if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more, well, brothery shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below. And thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Alberto Guerre, Camila Noceda, Chris Allegretta, Chris Briggs, Chris Calderon, Chris Nelson, Cobalt Retrotech, Control-Alt-Reese, Daniel Hubbard, Greg from Hrutk Mods, Paul Spencer, Ryan, Scott Thompson, and Sutek, who are my highest tiered patrons and all of my Patreon supporters for helping to make these videos possible.